Haunted houses are a staple of horror in today's culture. Claustrophobic space, poor line of sight, and eerie surroundings make haunted houses an exhilarating yet horrifying experience. Indie horror game The Cabin Factory takes that to the absolute next level. In The Cabin Factory, you play as Greta, an older woman who is trying to make ends meet by working for a factory that manufactures horror cabins for Hollywood. Her job entails checking cabins to determine whether they are artificially creepy or truly haunted. It turns out, some of the creepy haunted cabins are in fact haunted. I'm not sure if this company has low survival rates for its employees, but the goal is to get 8 correctly identified cabins in a row. If you misidentify a cabin as dangerous or clear when it is the opposite, you have to start over from square one. How does the company know you've gotten one correct versus incorrect? Does that not render your job useless if they already know which ones are haunted? I don't really know, but the cabins range from enormously crazy to silly goofy to horrifying. In today's video, I want to go through what I believe are the top 10 scariest and spookiest cabins you can get in the Cabin Factory, whether they are haunted or whether they are not haunted. I'll be using a couple of different metrics, one of which being how I liked the cabin, if I thought it was spooky, how well it got me. I have a lot to say about this game, and I'm working on a couple of videos that pull in a lot of research into Uncanny Valley and how horror media is created and introduced to the public, because I think this game does horror really extraordinarily well. It also has such a charm to it, though, that when you step into that cabin, you really don't know what to expect. From crazy stuffed animals to creepy girls, it's got pretty much everything. So I'm going to go through, like I said, the top 10 cabins that I think you experience in the Cabin Factory. And if you like this kind of content and enjoy the video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It helps the YouTube algorithm and also helps me quite a bit. So enjoy the video, and if you disagree, agree, or have a different idea of the worst cabin in the Cabin Factory, please feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm really interested to see what you guys think. Before we get into the top 10 list, I do want to discuss 2 honorable mentions that did not make my top 10, but I do believe are really cool and really important to discuss. The first one I call the fire cabin. With this haunted cabin, you clear the downstairs and go up the stairs to check on Hans. When he is not there, you begin to hear crackling coming from downstairs. When you go downstairs, you find the house is on fire and the mother and father seem to be unable to get out. Personally, I did not find this cabin scary, but it is haunting in its own way, and it has huge lore implications for the game and for Greta. Secondly, I wanted to mention the downstairs replica. This is when you walk in the house and there's a tiny doll layout of the house in the living room. You then hear ominous, slow footsteps as in the dollhouse you see a large blue figurine slowly approaching the table that you are standing at. This one is super creative, but in my opinion it pales in comparison to the stress that the upstairs replica causes players, so I wanted to mention it, but for me it is not top 10 material. With that being said, let's talk about the top 10. My number 10 scariest Cabin Factory cabin is Hans' Little Wiggle Dance cabin. In this cabin, it seems clear downstairs. You go upstairs to check Hans and find everything seemingly perfectly normal until his legs start slowly moving. It feels very inhuman-like since the rest of him is perfectly still, and it feels for me like something is pretending to be human, but is definitely not human. So once I saw that got me out of the house quicker than truthfully most of the cabins did. My number 9 scariest cabin is the father window cabin. In this one, you walk inside of the house to see the father standing outside the window. His silhouette is clear against the faint curtains. His presence here feels just so oppressive to me, as if I was just waiting for him to jump through the window. My first time playing, I did not realize you had to go up to him in order to determine whether the cabin was haunted or not, so him just being there was enough for me to assume it was haunted and get out. But if I had to choose a specific version of the father window cabin, it would definitely be the haunted version where the window bursts. Number 8 on my list is the cabin I call the dishwasher is definitely broken cabin. In this one, you walk through the living room of the house to check on Hans, but before you can get to the stairs, the dishes fly off the table at your head. As you flee the cabin, well assured that it is haunted, you hear other items hitting the wall as an invisible tornado hurls them at you. This game does very well with its creep factor. You never know quite what to expect when you step in the house, and it has really great subtle horror cues dispersed throughout your experience. That being said, the dishes going everywhere was just not on my bingo card, so it got me really good. I knew the dishes would move at some point, but the fact that they waited until I got right next to the table, just 10 out of 10, or I guess in this situation, 7 out of 10. The good news is number 6 is a clear cabin. The bad news is it's number 6 on a top 10 scariest cabin list. I call this the worst family portrait ever cabin. You enter the house to find all 4 family members standing in the living room, horrifying grins on their face. I'm not gonna lie here, the mother, Hans, and Greta are all a 10 on the scare meter. But the father just kind of looks like he's trying not to sneeze. Once I got over the initial, oh my god, are they going to move jump scare, I looked at their faces a little more and the dad really does look like he is about to sneeze or trying not to sneeze. So making fun of him in that way kind of made it a little less scary, but you have to turn your back to the family to check the rest of the cabin to ensure nothing else is moving. And knowing they're just standing there and grinning is such a dread-inducing experience, as you hope and pray that when you turn around, they will still be there and will not have moved. Now we are getting into the spicy cabins. Number 5 on my list is pretty easy to miss if you're sprinting through the house as I did on my first playthrough. I call this the dad what the fuck cabin. You clear the living room and go upstairs to check on Hans. Once you turn back to go downstairs, you see the father has turned from his plate and is staring at you with that same sneezy grin on his face. Now, you have to pass by him as he turns to watch you, no matter what angle you approach from. The stress and dread of having to walk by him again, knowing that he is in fact haunted, is what got me especially good on my first playthrough, as when you go to walk by him, there is a split second, even if you're playing it right, where you have no idea what he's going to do because you cannot see him. And then if you are backing out of the cabin and watching him, then the mother is on the other end of this clearly haunted cabin, and so you can't keep an eye on her either. You're stuck between 2 really difficult, hard places. So that is why this is number 5 on my list. Number 4 sent me into fight or flight mode. I call this cabin, I am never going into a basement ever again. In this cabin, everything appears clear as you clear the living room and check on Hans. As you approach the front door to leave this very obviously not haunted house, you see a tiny Greta blocking the door. As you lock eyes with her, you also hear the door in the kitchen creak open slowly. Against all better judgment, you go downstairs to see the mother holding Hans up. My first playthrough, I gave this woman no time of day, and I beelined it to the bathroom door. If you go up to her though, you see she has that same evil grin on her face as she delights in punishing her son. Once you enter the bathroom, you see yourself as Greta in the mirror. You see tally marks from you and Hans on the wall, and then hear the mother beginning to berate you from the other side of the now closed door. She begins pounding the door, and you see child Greta barring the door, and then yourself as adult Greta. This might be the player's first time fully understanding that this tiny child Greta grows up to be playable character adult Greta, and that you are in this moment reliving your childhood memories in this very haunted house. Once the mother's monologue is over, you go to leave, and she's waiting for you across the room. She beelines it to you, and if you do not circle around the table in the basement strategically, it is very difficult to avoid her. She then chases you out of the house to round out the cabin. Truthfully, any of the chase sequences are pretty spooky, but this one was number 3 for me because once we entered the cutscene, I understood that I was safe until the game could finish the lore dump, so I had a disconnect from the feelings of stress and fear that I experienced when coming downstairs and seeing the mother and Hans. Once I went to leave the bathroom though, and the mother began walking towards me, I shit an absolute brick. There's something about the way this woman strides towards the player that is just terrifying in my opinion. Like, homegirl is power walking. And now we are in our top 3! Exciting! Yay! Woo! Anyways, my third scariest cabin was Dad What the Fuck the sequel. In this one, you check the house and the upstairs and everything seems fine. Once you check Hans, you go to return to the main floor and leave, except there's one sneezy looking individual absent from the kitchen table. And so you go to leave to press the danger button, except neither of the buttons are there anymore. You stare in confusion until you hear footsteps rapidly approaching. You have found the father. He was outside the cabin and is now sprinting towards you at full speed. You see the previously locked door across the atrium floor is now open, so you run up the stairs into the end of a long hallway through another door that puts you back upstairs in the cabin, all the while hearing the father's footsteps rapidly approaching. Feeling disoriented, out of breath, and terrified, you then leave the cabin and mark it as, holy shit, this is definitely haunted. And number 2, we already discussed the living room replica. Now let's address the upstairs replica. It took me several tries to understand what was going on with this one. Once I did, I was still so stressed with navigating the house. Instead of these creepy, life-sized wax figures you've gotten used to, instead of these creepy wax model figures you've grown used to, there are now just invisible spirit representations of them, patrolling the house and ensuring you stay there with them forever. It's easy enough to get past Hans, but timing Greta, the mother, and the father is a huge risk that can take several tries to accomplish. This one is number 2 because of how stressful not seeing your enemies are, but also because it is so unique and creative in my opinion. It might not be as scary as the others, but it's one of my favorites and is up there for me, which is why it received number 2. Lastly, number 1. This one got me so good, so incredibly good. In my humble opinion, it is a perfect mix of jump scare and dread-inducing horror. You enter the cabin and it seems clear. You go and check Hans and his legs are perfectly still. The frog is not growing or shrinking, and the remote is stationary. All seems well. You go downstairs, turn the corner, and suddenly you see her. She hasn't moved from her place in the portrait, but you now see more of her. Her body has appeared from nowhere, attempting to hide in plain sight as she stares you down from across the cabin. You almost don't notice as you're speeding through, but then she starts walking towards you with, again, such intent. If you aren't quick with your departure, she blocks you from the entrance and forces a restart. The reason this one was my number 1 was it just stuck out to me the most after the game. It was the one that I dreaded getting again when I replayed the game for footage, even though I knew how to beat it and knew what would happen. There's something so sinister about checking through the cabin and feeling like you've cleared it, just for her to be waiting for you the minute you get downstairs. Like I said, it's a perfect blend of jump scare and dread, and that is why I love it. And that is truthfully why I love this game. Like I said, I have a video essay coming out, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, talking about why this game does horror so well. Nowadays, larger studios put a lot of time and money into these really graphic and terrible and gruesome environments that are meant to induce fear in the players. And don't get me wrong, a good environmental set piece can really set the tone, but it's all about the player's perception of it. And what the Cabin Factory does is it makes it so the player has no expectations going into the cabin. You can expect that you might get haunted. Granted, there are expectations of this is a horror game, I will get haunted at some point, but when you see some of the characters from Outlast, for example, you know damn well they're gonna try to kill you. Like, there's no question about it. You know, like, you see them and you are 100% sure what is about to happen and what you have to do to avoid that. But in the Cabin Factory, sometimes the haunts are just spooky haunts. There's nothing sinister about them. Sometimes it's just a mug moving. Sometimes it's just the stuffed toy growing a little bigger. Other times, though, the character models in the house will chase you out of there, or throw dishes at you, or follow you around the room. Like I said, I could talk about this for a really long time, so I'm going to save it for my video essay. But I think what makes these cabins also unique and special is you can't ever predict what exactly is going to happen on your first playthrough. And that's why it does so well. It leaves you in a space where you can't ever predict what the cabin is going to give you. But that's enough rambling for me. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to this point in the video, I would really appreciate a good like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'd like to see more content from me, because I like hearing myself talk, and I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk as well. I also stream over on Twitch primarily, so if you'd like to go check me out over there, would very much appreciate to see you there with our community. I play a lot of Ark, but Sunday I leave for horror games so that I can play through spooky games like this and then yap about them on YouTube. We also have a pretty cool Discord if you want to come join us there. And this is also a good time to thank all of the people who have subscribed to the Patreon that allow me to continue to do videos like this one. Thank you so much. I love and appreciate you. And if you find yourself interested in supporting me further, Patreon comes with a variety of benefits, including early access to YouTube videos and 1 free shot of liquor per month during a stream. So if that sounds interesting at all, come check us out. Anyways, thank you again, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.